one client, I remember her, she's like, I ran 5 miles without even having to use a sanitary pad. I mean, I didn't have to use a panty liner. And another client's like, I'm out jumping on the trampoline with my kids and, I feel great. I'm like, great. That
Wow.
means that means no surgery. I mean, they're just like, really? I'm like, if you're not symptomatic, there's no reason to operate. And of course, like I had initially started out thinking, okay, post-op, we'll use these hormones topically or vaginally to decrease the risk of any erosion. But then preoperatively, to get healthy tissue to operate with, it was just completely eliminating the need for surgery. And that happened over and over and over again until eventually I was like, I got to get this over the counter.
Welcome to another episode of the Hack My Age podcast. I have a hip update. If you've been following me for more than a minute, you know I had a total hip replacement. I have had osteoarthritis, and it just got me. And my energy is up, my healing is great, my inflammation is down. I'm doing a lot of biohacks, but the main ones are BPC 157. It's a peptide. I'm injecting that in. Flex Beam, which is red light therapy. I've got MitoPure's urolithin A on board, NAC, that's N-acetylcysteine, it's a supplement. I got my omegas, an anti-inflammatory diet. I'm prioritizing my sleep. I've got my estrogen on board, that's anti-inflammatory too. And the best part, I got lots of love. My kids have been taking care of me, and they have been amazing. I've never even expected this. And I can literally feel the oxytocin rise in me. And that's one of our hormones. It's our bonding hormone. And yes, it actually heals and repairs. I should do a whole episode on oxytocin because it's pretty amazing. And I'm going to see the doctor later this week. And I'm going to ask him, why is one leg longer than the other? And how am I going to fix that? So that's the only trouble I'm having. But before we dive into today's episode, I really want to share something exciting with you. And that's a new skincare experiment. And I'm trying out Timeline. This is the folks behind MitoPure. And they sent me their skincare product called the Serum or Le Serum. And now, if you haven't heard me rave about MitoPure yet, let me just fill you in a little bit. It's the first and only clinically tested pure urolithin A. And I got a fantastic podcast episode dropping next week that's going to dive into what is urolithin A and what it's all about. But for now, just think of it as like the secret sauce for tackling the root causes of aging right at the cellular level. So urolithin A, it gets the cells to recycle and cleanse themselves through a process called mitophagy. And that's basically giving your mitochondria, which are the energy powerhouses of your cell, a much needed boost. And I'm really loving the texture of this serum. It's super lightweight. It absorbs really quickly, and it's not greasy. It is not sticky. I generally feel that my skin is smoother. And I think that's because it's not just working on the surface, it's also helping renew my skin cells from within. And Timeline, it's based in Switzerland, and it's a leader in urolithin A research. And they spent a decade perfecting this product before bringing it to the market. And I can't wait to share my before and after photos on Instagram soon, and you'll see how bright my skin looks. And you'd never guess, I just went through major hip surgery, and everyone keeps telling me how great I look. And as someone who pays really close attention to ingredients, I really appreciate that most of them are easy to understand. And urolithin A is number 6 on the ingredient list. It's not buried down at the bottom. And plus, it's packed with a lot of other great ingredients like niacinamide, D-panthenol, caffeine, and my favorite, peptides. I also saw that there are no fragrances either. So I love that. But here's the best part. Timeline is offering 10% off your first order of the serum. And I just head over to timeline.com/Zora. That's TIMELINE.com/ZORA. Now, you're going to love this episode with Dr. Anna Cabeca. We talked about a lot of sexual health, low libido. Is it physical? Is it sociological? Is it psychological? How to improve our sexual function and our libido, as well as UTIs, and dryness, vaginal atrophy. We talked about, is it okay to live with low libido and how to have optimal vaginal health, even if you don't have a partner. And we took a unexpected deep dive into DHEA and testosterone and the differences, and a lot of information about optimal ranges of DHEA, oral versus transdermal, where's the best place to absorb it, etc. And another thing is the irreversible effects of testosterone. So Dr. Anna Cabeca, she's got a private clinic in Dallas, Texas, and she's helped over 10,000 women and probably millions of more through her books, her online videos, and her articles. And this has been going on for over 20 years. And she really likes to combine modern medicine and time-tested natural remedies that give the proven realistic solutions to women who are dealing with menopausal health challenges so that they can just lead the life that they want and they need and that they deserve. And she's not only double, but triple board certified and a fellow of Gynecology and Obstetrics, Integrative Medicine, anti-aging, and regenerative medicine. And she's also certified in functional medicine, sexual health, and bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And she wrote the bestseller, The Hormone Fix, the Keto-Green 16, MenuPause, and has been featured in Forbes and People Magazine, Mind, Body, Green, ABC, NBC, CBS. Maybe you've heard of her or seen her already before. So she's super qualified to talk about our topics today. So let's get started. All right. Well, it's a real pleasure to have Dr. Anna Cabeca on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I was so lucky to actually meet you in person in London in June of this year. And it was totally unplanned. And I was so excited because I knew of you and I listened to your podcast and we got connected. And so now here we are finally having you on the show to talk about sexual health, because you have a lot of jams, but this is one of your big jams that we need to talk about, that women don't talk about, I think, enough in terms of their own health and sexual health and menopause. Was that okay?
Oh my gosh, I love talking about it. Yes.
Okay. Well, before we get into the sexual health piece, I would love to know, in your practice first, what are some of the, well, let's talk about what are some of the sexual health complaints that you're hearing about from women who are going through this menopause transition, try to pinpoint some certain symptoms.
Yeah, one of the most common is low libido, is a loss of libido, feeling like, okay, I'm okay once we get started, but I never have that initial desire anymore, worried about what's wrong with me, the sense of loss of orgasm, or it's taking me forever to orgasm. There's those experiences too. And then there's the pain symptoms, the discomfort when you're having sex. For some clients, I've heard it described as the ring of fire, or feel like knives are jabbing me when we're trying to have sex. I'm powering through for the sake of my husband's pleasure, partner's pleasure. And that's the most devastating. I'd like to say that these are reversible for the most part. From what I've seen, once we get to the underlying issues, we really can reverse these symptoms. The others is the vaginal discharge, odor, and urinary tract infections after intercourse. That can be a really big deterrent. And so what we need to do, the things that we need to do to shift that, because as we age, the hormonal changes, the natural flora within our vagina changes, the pH changes. So we want to keep reversing, keep reversing that.
What about incontinence or that leakage, when you sneeze or you laugh or you cough? Do you see some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So incontinence is a really big issue. And it's estimated that, 85% of women over age 60 experience incontinence. And I see it in young, I had it in my 30s postpartum, right? That was an issue. This is where I really learned to fine tune hormonal therapies to decrease incontinence and to prevent a need for surgical intervention. And incontinence is a big issue. Also, when it comes to sexual health, fear of leaking urine during intercourse. That can be a really big concern and a deterrent too. And it's a life limiter. It's one of those things like, if women are going to experience this, but there are things we can do to reverse it. Incontinence is one of those issues that, is from a caregiver standpoint, the straw that breaks the needle's back. It's one of the most common reasons that a caregiver will then put their aging loved one into a nursing home. And I always joke, Zora, I mean, I've got 4 daughters. I've disciplined them with some firm boundaries through their teenage years and all that good stuff. Like, I am going to give them no excuse to tuck me away somewhere.
Me too. Me too. I totally agree. Yes, when you think about these issues, it's on a day-to-day basis. If you're worried about leakage, or you may not want to go to the aerobics class or go shopping because you're worried about where's the next bathroom. It's a constant stress that we don't need, that's so easily remedied. And that's why I want to talk a little bit then how. Well, actually, before I do that, the one thing that came in my head when you said low libido and pain during sex. And do you meet women who say, well, I don't really care about sex anymore and I'm fine with it. I don't need it for the rest of my life. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that sexual health is necessary for optimal health. And so no partner, no problem, right? But sexual health is necessary for optimal health. And when that's reignited into your own personal life, it really is powerful biohack. It really is powerful longevity medicine. It changes the way we show up in the world. And so I definitely have met, and I have friends and colleagues and patients that have been like, I've been dead from the waist down. And clients are like, oh, I don't care if I never have a partner. I'm just not interested in sex. And I, want to emphasize, I say, well, just play with me for 30 days. Let's just work on your own orgasm, your own pleasure, recreating that into your life, just the sense of joy, of pleasure, et cetera. I mean, the clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings. The tip of our finger has 2,000. I mean, we are designed for pleasure. And that's a powerful way to increase oxytocin, the most powerful hormone in our body, the hormone of longevity and good quality life. And so just like, let's do this 30-day experience. We're really working on self, for instance, self-pleasuring for a day and for every day for 30 days, for instance, and are prioritizing oxytocin, oxyplay, just increasing things that doing things that increase your body's natural love hormone and connection hormone. So it can be laughing, it can be playing, it can be dancing, but really focus on that for 30 days. And let's just see, where are you at now? Where are you at in 30 days? And 100% of the time, the client's more in a turned on state,
Mm.
which is a state of creativity.
Yes. And it's a state of joy. So when I think about, there's two things. There's the biological aspect when you think about orgasms and the way I understand it, and self-pleasure. This is, and even the act of intercourse, this is having a physiological effect on the vagina, right? It's getting more fluid, more blood flow. So this is having a healthy vagina, right, for the future. And does this somehow tie into the vaginal prolapse or the UTIs or the incontinence? Does that help with those issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Incontinence, prolapse, issues with constipation, anal fissures, hemorrhoids, I mean, pelvic pressure, and then worst case, as if we without intervention, as we age because of prevalence of HPV, when we have a higher vaginal pH. Now, the pH of the vagina is normally acidic, very acidic, because it's a defense mechanism, right? So we're going to kill those viruses, kill those parasites, kill those bugs, right? And then healthy lactobacillus live in that acidic environment. As we age, the pH of the vagina becomes more alkaline. Now, this predisposes to other bacteria like a bacterial vaginosis, that fishy odor, and you don't have to live with it. Let me tell you, we don't, I don't use typically antibiotics to treat it. I work to improve your own natural flora and the pH of your vagina. But also, as we get a higher pH and more diverse pathogenic bacteria within the vagina, that increases our risk for cervical cancer and vaginal cancer. And so like you have to do something about it. I mean, it is inevitable that every one of us will have these changes if we're not actively intervening. And so I think that's one of the most important things and that we can do. And I say, vaginal health and sexual health is necessary for optimal health.
I'm so glad you cleared that up, because that is sometimes you think, well, okay, you don't need to have a partner. You can self pleasure, you can explore, and you probably find a lot of things about yourself. But on top of it, it's good for you. It's healthy to do this. But as a gerontologist, we also know that through the Harvard study of adult development, which was an amazing study, it's one of the longest longitudinal studies on adults, shows that more than smoking, obesity, exercise, fame, wealth, whatever it is, the things that keep us living happier longer is strong social connections. So think about, it is eventually, it doesn't have to be a sexual partner, but when you think about the intimacy that you have with somebody very, very close, your partner, your husband, your wife, whoever it is, well, that, like you said, you feel the oxytocin rushing through you, and all these hormones are really, really beneficial. So it's good for your health to have these relationships. I always tell people, nurture your network. It doesn't have to only be a sexual relationship, but if you have the intimacy, the sexuality there, and the sexual, you're getting all these sexual health benefits, like, wow, it's all wrapped up in one, and it's free, right? You don't need to take a medicine for that.
And it makes me think of one client I had that had done my Magic Menopause program, which is my 8-week online program that's foundational. That's foundational. I'd like all my clients and patients to go through that too, but it's do it in the online space. So I never met this woman per se, but one thing she shared with me over 8 weeks is that when she started, she was a dialysis nurse. And so she would go, work in the clinic all day and then come home, basically sit on the couch. She had a horse that she used to show jump, and she was ready to sell it at the beginning of the course. Like, she's like, I haven't been on it in 2 years. I'm ready to sell it. And she followed through the principles of the program, which is increasing oxytocin. It's the most powerful thing I can do to help clients to empower, increase oxytocin, balance hormones, decrease inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity. It's kind of like this core foundational hack that I really apply for my clients. And by the end of the 8 weeks, she was on her horse again. She was riding, and she goes, I'm off the couch riding the horse. And she goes, you know what? Not only do I love being around my family more, I'm more engaged, and we're doing things together, but they love being around me more too. And I love that she said that, because there's nothing I can write on a prescription pad that's going to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely a beautiful story. I love that story. And because, and it's oxytocin is released when you are with animals too. Just stroking a dog is going to release the oxytocin. For you both actually get it, is the way I understand. The dog gets more oxytocin and the human gets more oxytocin. So I can imagine with the horse as well, right?
Absolutely. When you're doing things you love with people you love doing them with animals you love doing out in nature. And there's that battle between oxytocin and cortisol. High stress state, low sex drive, low sociability, low connections. But so you want to reverse that. Oxytocin and cortisol oppose each other. So high oxytocin, less stress, more peace that surpasses all understanding, like it says in the Bible. The more connection, more social interaction, more creativity.
Mm. So this is a great hack for us to pick up on, is doing the things that you love and that bring you joy. And for the sexual health, let's give people some tools. Like we mentioned, there's self-pleasure, for example, or investing in your intimate relationships with your partner. What else can a woman do to improve her sexual health? Even if it's, I don't know, if it's a medication that you prescribe, I don't know what else we can give them.
Oh yeah, there's so much. I mean, actually in 2010 created a course called Sexual CPR.
Oh,
So
yes, I
that's a
saw
five.
that. I wanted to go
It's
into that.
so
Yeah.
it is so good. It is a 5-week program, and kind of talk about there are many things that affect our desire, our libido, ability to initiate pleasure, that turned on state, right? That how we want to show up in the world. As a gynecologist, when you're finished your annual examination and you're about to leave the exam room and your hands on the door, and you're like, ready to say, okay, well, I will see you in 6 months or a year or whatever it may be. And the patient says, doctor, but my libido's been really low. Like I have no sex drive. That is a 3-hour discussion, easy 3-hour discussion. So I built that into a 5-week program to address the many areas that can be affecting our libido and our sex drive, whether it's medication, psychological, relational, emotional, physical, is it structural? What are there are many factors that can affect our sex life, our libido, our sense of turn on. And so that that is a foundational program. It's a very holistic approach and understanding what does feeling sexy mean to you? What does desire mean to you? What turns you on? What makes you happy in and outside the bedroom? Like we're not even talking, with sex here. What turns you on in general in life? And it really is a transformational program. I even have a module in there for men because it is, again, sometimes we're going through hormonal changes, men are going through hormonal changes or erectile issues, and you want to reverse it so that you both are also on the same page and you can have these discussions. So communication is a really big piece in sexual CPR. So really like first thing when it comes to igniting sex drive and libido, it is addressing, it's self-discovery. It's that self-discovery, like, oh God, please don't make me do any more self-help. Oh, please, there's that maybe initial knee-jerk response that you may have, but it's like self-discovery is enlightening. It is removing, energy blocks, it is creating awareness, and that's an important piece. The second thing is understanding our anatomy, like what's happened from, maybe childhood trauma, adverse childhood experiences, sexual abuse, again, postpartum or childbirth trauma. It's a really big under talked about issue. Like I had, I'm a OBGYN, and with my first daughter, I had a anterior tear that tore right alongside my urethra, right up to the clitoris, and I was in pain for a year. Like I didn't like it, forget it. When you have pain every time you have sex, why would you want to? So, and then in menopause, as the tissue becomes less elastic, um, less vascular, there's pain and there can be pain and discomfort with intercourse. So again, that's where hormones come in. And one of my biggest hacks, I created for myself and my clients is my product called Julva, which has DHEA, which is a pro-hormone, and it works all to the muscular layer. So it's so much better than estrogen, which works only on the mucosa. DHEA works on all 3 layers of the vaginal wall. So the mucosal layer, the sub-Q, and down to the muscle layer, and reverses the hands of time. Plus, I put in plant stem cells from the alpine rose, which have been shown scientifically to have antiviral and antiviral plus helps rebuild collagen. So the combination is powerful, and that's in my product Jolva. And with that said, pelvic floor exercises, strengthening the pelvic floor, strengthening your core is key. And that goes till we die. Till we die, we have to do that.
Yeah, good tips. I do get a lot of feedback about Jolva, and this is years ago. Like I don't know when you came out with that, but I know that it's been already several years that people would say, "Hey, you should try this product," or "I really like it." And you mentioned it has DHEA, and it gets on it reaches many more layers than just say estrogen. Because I'm thinking, how does that compare to an estriol pessary or a gel or a cream? Because a lot of doctors, if you have these issues, would recommend estriol, not the estradiol, but in terms of estriol for the vaginal area.
Yeah, again, estriol is great topical. It works, on the surface layer. So
Mhm.
it doesn't work deeper. So again, I'm a gynecologist, and I'll tell you, really there's a couple reasons I really got into fine tuning hormones, and especially topical hormones for the vulva. I say clitoris to anus, the most valuable real estate of our body. We really want to keep that healthy because when problems are there, it just affects our quality of life like nothing else. So back in 1999, Zora, I had a patient that came in who was 63 years old. She'd had a history of ductal carcinoma in situ of the breast and was told by her I trained at Emory as well, Emory University breast specialist, that she could not be on any hormones. So a few years later, I'd come to Southeast Georgia and she knew I was from Emory. So she came to see me armed with research. And she said, Dr. Anna, I'm a woman of the 60s. I've had DCIS, several years ago, and I've been without hormones and I have no sex drive. It hurts when I try to have sex and I'd rather die than live this way. Help me. And I was like, she was intimidating. She's like 5'10", salt and
Oh,
pepper hair, black horn rimmed glasses, a very powerful, forceful woman. She was executive at biotech firm. And she said, look, I've been doing this research on testosterone and DHEA and I want to know what you think about it. And I was a researcher before I went to medical school. So I dug in the research and I said, there's no contraindication for you here. I said, first of all, we want to optimize your health, right? We want to create bodies inhospitable to cancer. And let's see what we can do with topical DHEA and testosterone. And so I started compounding her on these creams and following her for over time, as well as optimizing other aspects of her health. And, I got to follow her for over 20 years. And over that time, she like at her, so she was 63 when she came to see me. We first did a bone density scan. At 73, she'd had no significant bone density loss. I mean, she had maintained her bone density for 10 years, where otherwise you're expecting it to decline. So that was significant. And at 83, she was writing her memoirs and very active and still lobbying on Capitol Hill. And so you get to see these quality of life issues when, like, at 63, she's like, I'd rather die than live this way. And then she lived, a very, very fulfilling life. And so that was one client that I really started digging into the research. And then the second is a client that I had who had incontinence issues, and many clients with incontinence issues. And I would do sling procedures at that time in the early 2000s. You'd see the billboards, mesh erosion, this, that. I'm like, I want to make sure I don't get mesh erosion. So I'm like, why, let me start using the testosterone and DHEA vaginally or topically prior to surgery. So I have the best, healthiest tissue, because, it reverses the age of the vagina by 10, 20, even 30 years, sometimes, depending on the age of the patient. You can really get that healthy vaginal pH, rugation, musculature back. And as I started getting better and better preoperatively with prescribing hormones, my patients would come in for the pre-op. Like, so I'd see them diagnose stress urinary incontinence, for instance, and then I would say, okay, let's do in 1 month or 2 months, let's come bring you back for pre-op. And the clients would start coming back and say, Dr. Anna, I haven't had any incontinence issues. And one client, I remember her, she's like, I ran 5 miles without even having to use a sanitary pad. I mean, I didn't have to use a panty liner. And another client's like, I'm out jumping on the trampoline with my kids and, I feel great. I'm like, great. That
wow.
means that means no surgery. I mean, they're just like, really? I'm like, if you're not symptomatic, there's no reason to operate. And of course, like, I had initially started out thinking, okay, post-op, we'll use these hormones topically or vaginally to decrease the risk of any erosion. But then preoperatively, to get healthy tissue to operate with, it was just completely eliminating the need for surgery. And that happened over and over and over again until eventually I was like, I got to get this over the counter. So that's how I created, that's one of the reasons why I created Julva, so that it could be over the counter.
That's amazing. Before Jola came, you said you were using DHEA and testosterone, and now you're just using the DHEA. Is it having the same effect? And what's the difference if you did have the testosterone in there?
Yeah, so DHEA converts at the cellular level to estrogen and testosterone. So it is a perfect beginning preventive, like again, you want to prevent the muscle loss, you want to prevent the tissue thinning, you want to prevent the nerve loss and blood supply loss that will happen to all of us as we age if we don't do something about it. So pelvic floor exercises, plus, as again, I got better and better at this, using the combination of DHEA with plant stem cells, with a base of emu oil to really help the drive the ingredients deeper as a prescriber. And also the other thing is I wanted to create something that they could use clitoris to anus that didn't have to be inserted into the vagina. Sometimes we still need to go into the vagina, but because the vulvar area is so vascular, we can use this regularly, and that naturally gets absorbed into the vaginal tissue and improves the, all of those things, the pH, the elasticity, the natural glandular secretions. So that is like reversing the hands of time. So I do that topically, and I usually say this is preventative and long term. Now, occasionally, I still need in clients who have had prolapse issues, or we're not getting a complete, let's say, cure with the topical. Then we'll go with a suppository, and I'll typically, that has to be prescription. And so that can be just straight DHEA like prasterone or Intrarosa. I can combine it with testosterone, and that usually just significantly helps. I rarely have to use vaginal estrogen.
It's amazing. Yeah, I don't hear many doctors talking about that. And so it's a really great hack too, because we can get this over the counter. We can go online and get your Jelva, or even DHEA is not that difficult to get in, depending what country you are in. Spain, it cannot, but it's not that difficult. So why is DHEA, because you said DHEA can turn it into testosterone and estrogen, is it like that for everyone? Is it some people have more estrogen, some people get more testosterone? Like, does it know how much to convert into based on what your body needs? And do we all react the same?
Ideally, when you have healthy cells to begin with, or early in the perimenopause, that's the best time to initiate the therapy. As we become more atrophic as we age, it's going to take more and longer to get the results. So that's with, vaginal rejuvenation procedures, et cetera. So getting started. And the research shows that DHA converts at the cellular level. So at the cellular level, it's converting to testosterone to estrogen to work on the layers of the vaginal wall, to work on the cell membranes, et cetera, to improve that elasticity and function where it doesn't show up systemically in circulation. So
Hmm.
it's really working at the cellular level.
Does menopause mean the loss of our sexual function and sexuality?
No, no, menopause does not mean the loss of our sexual function and sexuality. It can be the reawakening or rediscovery or refinement of that. And I think that's where important, empowering piece for women is, what turns me on? What brings me pleasure? I mean, in and outside the bedroom, like what lights me up? And that's a powerful awareness. When we're outside, I think of the reproductive haze years where we're busy doing everything. We can really in menopause experience being present in our body, being present in our life, being present with what empowers us and gives us passion and brings us passion and makes us feel energized. I think that's the empowering piece of menopause.
Thank you. This is what we wanted to hear, because especially after everything we've been talking about, yes, and you just gave us the tools on how to really thrive, have our sexual health thrive, and our libido, everything function optimally during and peri and post menopause. DHE sounds pretty powerful, and it's can do so many things like convert into estrogen and testosterone. So then I'm thinking, well, why even take testosterone? You need the prescription. And some women react poorly to it, not all of them, but some of them may actually love testosterone. I've heard of these women who are just loving their libido. It's just so fabulous with higher dosages of testosterone. But she may be paying a price because she has acne, maybe male pattern baldness, some chin hairs. So DHEA could be a good option for her. What do you think?
I say DHEA is first. It's
Yeah.
first option, right? DHEA is part of like optimizing DHEA is associated with longevity, is associated with resilience and improved immune system and lower risk of cancers. So, like the combination with my Mighty Maca superfood combination, we've seen 70 to 200% improvement naturally in your DHEA level, as well as day 21 progesterone level. So it's supporting your body's natural hormone balance and use of your hormones and production of your hormones naturally. So that's always like part of the first piece that I incorporate into my programs and like the foundations. There's a piece there. And so when we're using DHEA, because it can go to testosterone and estrogen, it's something that is powerful depending, on your genetics too, where it's going to convert. But topically on the vaginal level, we're not seeing these increases in, testosterone and estrogen in the blood significantly. Now, when we're using testosterone, depending on how we're getting it, a little bit based on our genetics, a little bit based on our stress level, et cetera, is what our body is going to do with that testosterone, because we make estrogen from testosterone. We can make healthy forms of estrogen and unhealthy forms of estrogen. And we can also make dihydrotestosterone, which is most associated, that is a very potent testosterone that is associated with the acne, the male pattern baldness, with the hirsutism or the facial hair, the clitoromegaly, et cetera. You can see that from too much testosterone. Testosterone is a two-edged sword because, a little bit goes a long way. Some patients love the feel of those really high levels. And so hence pellet clinics have, propped up on every city around the country. But those are really high levels of testosterone. And then after a while, you're really inhibiting part of your HPA axis and your own body's natural production of testosterone, and they stop feeling good. And so there's a reason. And one of the things I teach, Zora, is especially in men's health and women's health, when you're on these high doses of testosterone, if you stop for any reason, first of all, wean off, support your adrenal glands, really empower your body's natural production. And if you're on these high doses, may, really think about the long-term consequences, because the research has shown that people who stop testosterone, this study was done in men, looked at increases in suicidal ideation and depression post cessation. Now we know with guys, very obviously, these high doses of these testosterone replacements associated with shrinkage of the testicles, right? And guys are like, oh, I don't care. I've got this great libido. I've got great erections, all this good stuff. Yes, but you stop that and your testes aren't producing the testosterone it used to do. So you've actually done your body more harm than good in the long run. So to look at this double-edged sword, and there is a nuance and a balance, and it's the optimal numbers and ranges are different for each person, but also depending on how you're getting testosterone naturally or exogenously if you're on a testosterone replacement. So that's the that's the hard part about testosterone. Again, I've been in it a long time, so I see clients that have been on pellets, for a number of years, and then they just crash. That like, I'm done with the side effects. I'm done with doing the pellets, and I just crash. I don't want anything that I do working with a patient or I recommend for my clients online or for my audience that is going to inhibit their own body's ability to produce its hormones naturally and optimally, especially as we age. So I say I do hormone replenishment, not replacement. I always, as much as I'll prescribe certain things, I want to empower your body's natural functions.
About testosterone, I understand that there are some irreversible effects like deepening of the voice. Is that true? And like what
Yes.
levels is that must be super high levels.
It really, again, depends on the individual and where they're converting testosterone to. Like for, it's again, I'll use men as an example. Obvious in men when they're converting to estrogen, because now they have man boobs or moobs, right? They start to get chest and they're converting testosterone to estrogen via the aromatase pathway. When you converting more testosterone to dihydrotestosterone via the 5-alpha reductase pathway, you are going to have the more of those male pattern baldness, the acne, the hirsutism, the deepening of the voice, even more significantly. So paying attention to that, your doctor's got to look at those pathways and intervene. And there's certain things we can do to intervene, especially the deepening of the voice.
Yeah.
It's a real concern because I haven't seen that reversed.
Yeah.
And thank
That's
God, I've never had any patient that had
yeah.
that. So I
Yeah.
will say, but it is definitely it. I've seen clients come in with that for sure.
Can you overdose the DHEA?
Yeah, you can overdose any hormone. You can definitely like oral DHEA. One of the reason I went to transdermals is for me, like oral DHEA, I couldn't, I get acne and breakouts, even 7-keto DHEA. I mean, I just wasn't able to tolerate oral. So I started doing transdermals early on for me and my patients to avoid those side effects. I think the most important thing is really, again, empower your body, empower your detox pathways, empower your body to make our adrenal glands or take over our ovarian function as we age. So we want to we want to keep our adrenal glands healthy. So we never want to suppress, if we're creating something that's going to suppress our body's own natural production, we really have to pay attention to that. Yeah, definitely you can overdose with DHEA. And I've seen clients, for women, if we're doing an oral DHEA, like for my Jolva, it's 8 milligrams per half ml. So it's very concentrated, a nice topical formula. It's well absorbed. It makes significant change. It's designed to work, right? It's a combination of ingredients that's designed to work. Or I've seen clients in with oral DHEA. Like for me, I like to start clients at a 5 milligram, but in a phospholipid base. So it's slow release. So we don't get that. We try to reduce the risks of converting to dihydrotestosterone and a slower release. I had a client come in the other day and she was put on 50 milligrams of oral DHEA. And I was like, whoa, well, your poor little adrenals are being told to retire.
Mhm.
Let's wake them up. Right. Again, I've been doing this now for 30 years. And in my own practice, the pendulum has swung, but I always think, okay, am I doing something to empower their body or disempower it? And that's how I look at interventional care.
What's the difference between taking DHEA vaginally and taking it orally?
Yeah, you're using it topically or even vaginally. You are bypassing first pass hepatic metabolism. When you're using it topically, you're very much using it at the local level, and you'll see the improvement in skin changes there.
Even if you put
Orally,
it on your
hormone.
arms, like let's say DHEA on your arm, or could you use Jolva on your arms? I don't know.
Well, you can use Jolva. I mean, it is clean ingredients. It's designed, you can have oral sex with it. So clean enough to eat,
Oh,
right? So, I
wow.
mean, like that is the reason. And, it's funny because the client brought in I have my patients bring in their vitamins and any prescriptions they're taking so I can review them. And she brought in this estrogel. She goes, I, was given this by my doctor and she says bioidentical estrogen, but I looked at the ingredients and there's like all these hormone disruptors. I'm like, oh God, it's just so disgusting. I'm like, if you wouldn't eat it, if we're avoiding it in our skincare, the last place we want to put it is in our vagina. So there's a problem with a lot of these. I'm like, they can make clean products. Why don't they?
Yeah.
Anyway, I can, so I do. And that's something to
And
think about.
I totally interrupted you because I wanted to know the difference between oral and transdermal DHEA. So I wanted to think, yeah, I don't know if there's a difference if you take the DHEA vaginally or if you put it in your arms. Are you going to see it systemically, or is there any difference with that as well in addition to the versus oral?
Yeah. So, okay, when you're doing oral DHA, it can help internally. It definitely can. And we can see improvements in immune function and, energy. We can see that. We don't see the skin changes per se, definitely not the vaginal vulvar area. The same thing with, oral estrogen or or testosterone, even testosterone injection. We can see some improvements, but not as significant as when you're applying the ingredients topically. When we use hormonal creams, we usually say put it on thin skin.
Mhm.
And so, like, I'm like, because there's cosmetic benefit to topical hormones, like you want to use it on skin that's going to get the best results, but to get it directly into the bloodstream, we want to put it on the thin skin. So we usually say chest, lower abdomen, vulva to vagina, vulva vaginal area. So clitoris, the labia, the perineum, all of that. The vaginal mucosa is very vascular, so it's very well absorbed there. But you can put hormones on any skin. If you're putting it on very fatty areas, there's a slower absorption versus when you put it on thin skin.
Hmm.
So, and depending on how you're using, like if we're using topical hormone creams, we are not going to see the levels significantly increase in the blood, but we will see it in the urine and saliva. So testing becomes nuanced too, depending on how we're using hormones.
What would be the optimal range for DHEA testing, whether it's through blood or urine?
So ideally, when we're looking at DHEA in the blood, it's DHEA sulfate. And so we look at this DHEA sulfate in the blood, and I like to see it above 150 in women through menopause and beyond. So above 150. And when we look in the saliva, we look at DHEA, and you want that in the optimal range on that test because again, DHEA is associated with a stronger immune system, stronger resilience, and the lower risk of cancer. So we want to pay attention to that. But ideally, we're getting our body to continue to produce it at healthy levels through when we age. Yeah, and then urine, same thing. When we're doing urine testing and in our group, we do the Dutch complete test and also look at your circadian rhythm of cortisol. So taking into account, okay, what's happening with your circadian rhythm, that's even more important than your total DHEA level. Like, how's your energy during the day? Are you flatlined? Are you tired and wired? What's going on? Because if we're producing too much cortisol or we're flatlined or like the foot is on the brake as far as that cortisol production goes on, that affects that affects every aspect of our body that creates problems.
So I imagine if somebody's taking DHEA through transdermally or using Jolva and they want to see their levels, would you recommend then taking the Dutch or a urine test over blood testing? Because like you said, you may not see the levels
It's good
necessarily.
to do it both ways.
Ah, good
So
answer.
with my clients, I'll do blood, then I'll do urine, and I usually will alternate because it tells us something different.
We're just wrapping up, but I want to shift into the world of maca because when I met you, you were telling me about Mighty Maca. It's a product you made, and you were inspired by your travels to Peru and actually all your travels as well. And Peru is well known for maca, and actually you opened it up right there in front of me when we met, and I drank it, and I was expecting it's green. I was like, oh, it's going to taste, brace myself, and it was lovely and was really happy. And then I shared it with some friends and they all loved it too. So this is a really great product. So I'd love to know, you said, well, just it's maca is said to help with energy, but also with hot flashes. So how does maca stand up to a hot flash versus hormone therapy?
Well, again, always want to empower your body's own natural hormone production and utilization of your hormones better and cleaner, right? And so when I was back in Peru in 2006, they would say if you're tired, drink maca. If you're infertile, drink maca. If you're, and then they would elbow my husband and say, it's the Peruvian Viagra. We were drinking some maca. So I went to study it. And first of all, I couldn't stand the taste of it. That's how I ended up incorporating other superfoods as I went. I mean, even my 2-year-old granddaughter, she's like my biggest fan on this. She loves it. It just so cute. Just grandma's heart, right? And so when I started looking at the research and realized, okay, this you know, indigenous maca, this root that grows at high altitudes in Peru, was used by the Incan warriors to give them stamina and strength and resilience and to improve recovery. And then it's specific to certain proteins. It's also rich in arginine, which increases nitric oxide, so good for cardiovascular health, longevity, etc. But it's how Viagra works too. So there was like the science that came into play. And then I looked at, how it helps with sexual function. It improves the libido, it improves energy, even the ability to orgasm, because it's also rich in histidine, not histamine, but histidine, which also improves blood flow and can help with orgasm. So it was all these great, it's like there's no downside to maca. It was really impressive to me as a scientist, and I started using it. And then as I incorporated and created this blend, I never used straight maca alone because I couldn't stand the taste. And at that point, I was traveling for a year and I'd had the powder. And so I just started combining, okay, what other superfoods are indigenous to this area? So that's how the 30 superfood combination was created. And then when I brought it into, practice and started giving it to my patients, it'd be like, I no longer have cravings. I have more energy and focus. I have my hot flashes are gone. It's the best thing to control my hot flashes, all of those aspects. And I think it's a combination of the ingredients that really do help with that because, again, to help with detoxification, alkalinization, help support our own adrenal function and ovarian function. I think those are the key aspects that the combination has worked for.
It's actually amazing how many of the menopausal symptoms that maca can attack. And is there a are there well actually the one contraindication that I heard of, but I'm not sure how true this is if you have thyroid issues to be careful with maca.
So, and I've read the research looking at that too, and I've followed it very closely in my own thyroid journey, as well as all my patients that I've put as this is a foundational product. I've always seen improvements in thyroid function, a decrease in thyroid antibodies. So again, because I'm not using straight maca, I don't have experience with straight maca and thyroid and following that clinically.
Mhm. Are there different types or grades of maca, or are they just kind of all the same?
Well, that's a really good question. There is research. There is beautiful, like there's, it's a bouquet of maca. And so you have red maca, black maca, yellow maca. I mean, so there's this blend of maca, and depending on the region where it's grown or the field it's grown in or what's been cultivated there, you have different varieties. I found the combination to work the best.
Oh, what's the deal with Peru and having all these colorful options of corn and quinoa and now maca? It's not just one color as we may know it or two. I was impressed when I went to Peru and I was like, purple corn? Wow,
Oh,
amazing.
I know.
It's incredible the variety that they have. I always thought Peru was this gem that nobody knows about. So it's great place to visit. Great place to visit.
Oh,
So
incredible.
let's everybody like got to try this mighty maca. We all have a discount code for sure. Hopefully we'll make it Zora, Zora, and you can try
Yes, it's Zora.
the Jolva, yeah, and the mighty maca, and as well as you have so many other great products on your website too. Before I let you go, there's a couple more questions. What is the single most important thing a woman needs to know about menopause?
Hmm. That menopause is a time of opening up, not giving up. And I really think that's true. One thing that I learned on my Camino de Santiago this year, I'm 58 years old, and part of my celebrating menopause, part of my grieving the trauma in the world, part of my 58th birthday is that during this walk and continually walking, and it was getting to know myself. And I think that's what menopause is, getting to know without all the titles and the obligations and the jobs that we have to do. I mean, all those aspects of how we have to, or people pleasing is like just showing up for ourselves. And I think that's one of the gifts of menopause.
Fabulous. Absolutely. It's our time. It's our time. Before also, I would love people to know more where they can find you. Where is the best place for them to reach you?
Definitely at dranna.com. So my website, I have tons of resources. My podcast is anywhere you listen to podcasts. So at dranna.com. And I had Zora on my podcast. So Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen, definitely check out that episode. It was amazing. And on social media at The Girlfriend Doctor.
Yes, and the podcast is The Girlfriend Doctor with Dr. Anna Cabeca. And is there anything else that you'd like to talk or mention about that we haven't covered? Do you have any programs or events, things coming up?
So, yeah, definitely check out my sexual CPR program. It is foundational, right? Whether you have a partner or not, it is empowering information. And again, you can read testimonials from that program, but it's about self discovery and really identifying yourself. So, because I really feel strongly that sexual health is necessary for optimal health, I invite you to check out sexual CPR.
Oh, I'm first in line. Okay, guys. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us. And I really want to have you on for part two because I still have a ton more questions.
I'm happy to. Thank you for having me.